Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Dear brothers and sisters who lack nothing in our Savior Jesus Christ. Who remembers the magic 8-ball? The toy that you don't really see that often anymore. If you don't know what it is, it resembles an 8-ball like in the game of pool, but it's a lot bigger. It's hollowed out and it's got this dark liquid on the inside, and there's a 20-sided dice. And so you shake the 8-ball, you ask it a question, and one of the sides of the dice shows up, and it's got 20 sides, but really any answer that pops up on your magic 8-ball resembles one of 3 basic answers: yes, no, or maybe. Chances are good that you have some hilarious friends. If they have a magic 8-ball, they asked it some ridiculously deep question, like, what is the meaning of life? And then you shake it up, only to find it say, answer unclear, ask again later. How ridiculous it would be if they were serious, though. Trying to find the meaning of life by shaking a magic 8-ball. It's not going to help you, is it? That doesn't stop us, though, or it's not really any less ridiculous the other ways that we try searching for life's meaning. Don't you think? If you're like me, you don't wake up in the morning wondering the philosopher's questions: what is the meaning of life? Why do we exist? That doesn't agonize your heart 24/7, at least not directly. But if we take a closer look at the way that we live, at the way that we talk, at the way that we think, we are all desperately searching for meaning, for value, for worth in life. And if that describes you to a T, if you've been searching for meaning in your life, well, you picked the right Sunday to join us, because the search is over. In the book of Ecclesiastes, the writer, Solomon, just gives it to us. He spoils the ending with some very harsh sounding, some very serious words. Because Solomon embarked on this journey as well. He was the king of Israel, so he was very well off, but he committed himself to the search for meaning and value to his life. So he tried everything. He tried to find meaning and value in his riches and his possessions. He was the king of Israel, likely the wealthiest person alive in the known world at the time. But he didn't just sit around and enjoy wealth, enjoy life. He committed himself to hard work. He studied a lot. He tried learning about the world, growing in that respect. He also didn't just sit at a desk reading and writing. No, he committed himself to hard manual labor. He worked with all his strength at tilling crops, at building houses, at making a great garden for himself. And he also committed himself to romantic pursuits. He tried to find meaning and value in women. And he came up short every single time. Now, all these things are very common to the ways that we try to find meaning for ourselves, the way we try to mine meaning out of our lives, right? Work, possessions, relationships, learning. And these are all very, very good things in and of themselves. But there's a danger, isn't there, to mistaking what is good about life for the reason that we exist. For mistaking something that is fun or pleasurable or beneficial for the whole reason we're on planet Earth. Those of you who work, you do something very important for your company, for your community, for the army. And maybe day after day, as you see the value that you put in, as you see the things you're able to contribute, you start to say, hey, this is pretty cool. I'm pretty important. And you start to ascribe your meaning, your value, your worth to how you do at work. Those of you who put a lot of effort into raising your kids the right way, very important. You got to raise your kids, right? So that they become meaningful contributors to society, right? But as you see your work as a parent start to pay off, maybe you start to say to yourself, this is pretty cool. You start to see your value, your meaning, your worth all wrapped up in being a parent. You work hard to save up, to get a retirement fund, to get a savings that can withstand anything life can throw at you, and therefore you feel secure, you feel meaningful, you feel worthwhile. What's the danger in basing our meaning in riches, in relationships, or even in our own labor, our own toil? Is it all comes to an end? That's why the book of Ecclesiastes sounds so depressing, right? Because Solomon, the writer of Ecclesiastes, is forcing us to face facts. If you find your entire worth, entire value in your job, in the good that you do for your community or company, that's great, but you're not going to work forever. You will retire or get fired or die. Your job will come to an end. And then what will happen? Someone else will take over your position, and they might do a better job than you. They might do a worse job than you. You have no control. Your kids, you're working hard to raise them to know right from wrong. You're working hard to raise them to capitalize on their gifts. But eventually, they might screw up. And they might dishonor your hard work as a parent. Or, a little bit more positively, they will grow out of your house. They will become their own adults, and they won't need you as a parent anymore. What happens to you then? Are you just done with life? Your possessions won't last forever. Your money won't last forever. You cannot take it with you. And as Solomon says, once you die and give it all up, someone else is going to get it. So to wrap our whole meaning, our whole reason for existing in any one of these things is a huge mistake. To mistake something that is beneficial and good about life for the whole reason that we are alive. Pretty depressing. But let's track with Solomon again. He says, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I toiled for under the sun because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish? Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom and knowledge and skill, and then must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days, their work is grief and pain. Even at night, their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. Person can do no better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness, but to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth, to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. A friend comes to visit, but it's time for them to go home. You go out for one last coffee before you take them to the airport, and you have a great conversation over your coffee, but it's really tempting not to keep looking at your watch because soon it will be time for them to go. You're very hungry, and you're in Paris. And you go to an amazing 5-star, world-renowned restaurant, but what happens at these restaurants that are so famous is the portion sizes tend to be a little small. So it's the most amazing meal you could ever have, but you wish there was just a little bit more of it, then you'd feel satisfied. Brothers and sisters, if this life were all that there was, if this life were a rat race, a mad dash to squeeze as much meaning as we possibly can over our earthly pursuits, that would be very depressing, because your life will end. But Solomon's point in exploring this, in bringing this up, is to lead us to despair, to forget about finding our worth and our value in this life. You can't do it, but that doesn't mean you can't find meaning and value and worth. It's right here in Jesus Christ, given to you. Your life matters, not because of what the fingerprint you leave on other people's lives, not because of the fingerprint you leave on your community, but because of the fingerprint God has left on your life. Your life matters because it mattered to God first. He created you. You are here because God put you here, and He loves you, His creation. And even though we abandoned Him and looked for things that only He can give, true satisfaction, true value, true worth, we looked for it in everywhere other than Him, He sent Jesus Christ to redeem us and bring us back, to bring us into His family, to show us His grace, to show us how much we mean to Him. When you look at Jesus on the cross, you see how meaningful your life is. That Jesus, the Son of God, would give up His life to save you. That's how meaningful your life is. And so your meaning, your value, your worth cannot be found in this life, but relax, because this life is not all that there is. There is a life to come. And that's what Jesus says when your life really starts, when you join Him in heavenly glory forever and ever, when you are free from the toil, from the work, from the labor, from the pain, from the struggle, when you go home to be with Christ. And that is your full and free promise that He purchased for you on the cross and guaranteed for you by His resurrection. But that doesn't mean, brothers and sisters, what so many people think Christians think, that since we're headed to heaven, that our lives here don't matter, that since heaven is where the party really starts, that we don't have anything to do here on earth. No, quite the opposite. Thanks to what Jesus has done for you, your life has a meaning that transcends anything you can find anywhere else. Tomorrow, I am told, school starts. Teachers will take to the classroom, students will take to their desks, but you guys have the inside scoop. You are not just working a job to make it to the end of the day. You are not just sitting in the classroom to do as you're told and to make it through the day. No, you are a blood-bought child of Christ who is placed in that classroom, who is placed in that desk to declare the glories of the one who has called you His own. No matter where this week takes you, you do not have to desperately search for the reason why or the meaning behind it, because you know at every step that you take, you are a child of God. And you know why you're here. You're here to live out God's glory. And brothers and sisters, there is no truer satisfaction and value to your life than that. So Solomon did us a pretty big favor. He saved us from having to wonder what the meaning of life is. God has saved us from trying to figure this whole thing out, so we don't have to waste any more time chasing after meaning, worth, and value. Anytime that you doubt that you matter, come back to the cross and see how much you matter to God. Anytime you wonder where this is all going, look again at the empty tomb to see where your story ends, with you in heaven with God. And then, put your nose to the grindstone and get to work. At whatever task God has placed before you now, do it with all your might, with all your wisdom, with all your skill, knowing that it matters to God because you matter to God. God has given your life meaning. Amen.